Question of the day, how much VA home loan can I qualify for? Great question that we always get asked in some different ways. So sometimes we're asked, hey, can I qualify for the VA loan? Hey, am I eligible for the VA loan? Hey, how much would I be eligible to take out on a VA loan? Fantastic questions. The major thing that we gotta understand with the VA loan is that there's really two different components that we gotta take into effect. One is what you qualify for a loan, and then the other is just, are you eligible for utilizing a VA loan? And what is the difference really between qualifying and eligibility? So the VA loan, gotta think of it this way. The VA does not actually fund VA loans. So the Veterans Affairs does not actually fund loans. Instead, they essentially offer an insurance policy, you can think of it as, to lenders. We fund the loan, and the VA says, hey, here are all these basic guidelines. And as long as you meet the basics of these, we're willing to guarantee up to 25% of the loan value if there are any losses. Now there's some other nuances to that too, especially if you understand VA loans, smaller loan balances actually more, all that good stuff. But the point is, it's really more like an insurance policy, and it's not a loan that the VA actually directly funds. So what that means is we as lenders qualify people for it. So this is where we got to understand eligibility versus qualification if we're going back to ask that question of how much can I get, or the difference between eligibility and qualification. So eligibility really just means, am I eligible to potentially have that VA loan guarantee? So that really means just, do you meet the requirements as a buyer to utilize that VA loan? And the basics of it are today, it used to be a little more complicated, but the basics of it are today is, did you serve on active duty for at least 90 days at some point in your life? So that means if you were active duty and you were in for at least 90 days, fantastic. And that's currently how it's set up for us in this system. If you're guard or reserve, same thing. There used to be a little more of a complicated calculation that needed to be done, but now it's pretty much the same thing. Have you at least had 90 days of active duty service? And that can include your annual trainings piled up. And really, for those Guard Reserve members, if you're a Guard or Reserve, just know that we can take your retirement calculation sheets and we can run some calculations just to make sure. But the general requirement is 90 days of active duty service. Now that stems back from a while back ago where it's 90 days on active duty during wartime. And so since we technically still are at war, terrorism, then that means that we just need the 90 days. So that's really eligibility. The other reasons can be outside of that though. There are some more nuanced ones, like if you happen to be a surviving spouse, if someone had died while they're in service, you can get transferred VA loan. There's a couple other nuances there that can get you the VA loan without having been on active duty. But for the most part, that's the basics of it. So that's the eligibility. Just, hey, do I have the ability to even get that guarantee? Now, the real question is, how much can I qualify for? How much am I eligible for? Well, once we determine that you are eligible for a VA loan, then we can start talking qualifications. And that's done at the lender level. So us as a lender, we qualify you for how much. So we first check if you have eligibility, and that's going through the VA. That's pulling your certificate of eligibility. That's really the big document to be aware of. It's called the Certificate of Eligibility, COE. Some lenders might tell you, hey, you got to go get that and give it to us. But if you're working with a lender who really gets it and does a lot of VA loan work, they can get it direct from the VA portal. We do it all the time, and it's free of charge. It doesn't cost anything. If you're ever curious, just reach out and say, hey, Evan, I need to know what my eligibility is. Am I eligible for the VA loan? Do I have any eligibility remaining? Let me know. We'll gladly go over it. Now, once we know you're eligible, or we can find out how much eligibility you still have remaining, we then look at how much you qualify for. So, how much of a VA loan can you take out? Well, that depends on a few things. The big deal is up front, just like any loan you take out, it really comes down to your basics. The basics of what is your credit score? How much income do you have? How many debts do you have? And then we got to crunch all that together to kick out how much of a loan you can qualify for. That's where we determine what your potential monthly payment can be and all that good stuff. Now, here's the deal. That's very subjective based on the lender that you're utilizing. Eligibility, it's a little more clear cut. The VA is issuing your certificate of eligibility, and if a good lender understands it, they can get that and tell you yes or no, you got it cleared there. Now the deal is, if you were in the service and you get a COE that's not clear, then there are ways to try to push that and change it. So working with a lender who understands that is important. If you've also used a VA loan before and you have outstanding VA loans, your eligibility could be muddied up a little bit. And if it doesn't come across very clearly, that's something you want to be working with a lender who can help change that. But for the most part, eligibility is relatively clear cut. Hey, you're eligible or you're not. But then you have to qualify. Just because you're eligible for the VA loan doesn't mean that you can qualify to actually get a loan. You got to have the income. You got to be able to have the debts that are in order. You can't have more monthly debt payments than you do income. That wouldn't make sense. And then you also got to make sure that credit rating, those kinds of things, are in good shape. Now, credit score are one of those things that really varies by the lender that you utilize. Some lenders say you need to have 700 plus credit on a VA loan, or 680 or 660 plus. But in reality, the VA doesn't look so much at your credit score, so you technically can have a lot lower credit score. We typically work with folks from 580 and above, but we see folks really get the better deals once you're above 620 and really ideally 660 plus. That's where you end up with typically the best rates on our end, but we'll work with folks from 580 up. Just know it gets a little more complicated when you're in that 580, 620 range. So that's really what the qualification means. That's where you go through that loan qualification and you look at income and you look at your monthly debts, you look at the credit score that you have, and take into account your full profile. That's where you fill out a loan application just to know, do I qualify for a loan? So if you're eligible for the VA loan guarantee, wonderful. Now we need to qualify you for how much you can go get. This is where, if you've heard debt to income ratio, that is where you take your total monthly debts and divide it by your monthly income. You need to make sure that those ratios are in really good shape. So that's where we really mean by qualify for a loan. Now, we have some other good videos that help break down and explain how that qualification part works and how that works specifically if you're utilizing a VA home loan guarantee. But know that the difference between eligibility and qualification, the eligibility is just yes, no, can I get that VA loan guarantee? And qualification really means, do I have the income and ability to go get the loan, period. My name's Evan Kaufman. Hopefully this helps you go out there, win a home with a VA loan or any other loan type that you choose to use. Take care.